Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. People realize October is tomorrow. Next Saturday is Big Blue Madness, Kentucky's tip-off event. This Friday is Arkansas's tip-off event. I think they're calling it like the something at the Palace. UConn, their first exhibition game is the following Monday, October 13th. So the season is coming quick, but also we're starting to get some movement in recruiting. You know, recruiting right now has been very, very, very quiet. One, I just don't think this class is as good as some of the previous classes. Two, I think just NIL has everybody a little confused right now. Rev share a little confused. Players in 2026 are hearing what the AJ DeBonsa's got, the Nate Ament's got, thinking they're going to get the same. And coaches are like, it's a different set of rules, and you ain't AJ DeBonsa, you ain't Cam Boozer, you ain't Nate Ament. And so it's been a little bit slower. And it's been, by the way, especially slow for the number one recruit in America, Tyran Stokes. Okay, so why is it slow for Tyran Stokes? Well, he took a bunch of visits in the spring, but we mentioned this a few weeks ago. He actually started playing high school football. This is a crazy story. It's a great story. I love everything about it. But Tyran Stokes, who goes to high school literally about a mile from where I live, Sherman Oaks, Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California, he decided like a month ago, he's like, I want to play high school football. And he never played football, at least at a highly competitive level. But his argument was, this is my last chance to get to be a kid. I want to do it. And what was interesting was, I had a couple people tell me they thought it was a publicity stunt. Well, he was eligible to play last Friday. He played last Friday. He caught at least one touchdown that I saw, maybe a second one. And he's got his first home game since joining the team this Friday. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town traveling. But Tyran Stokes is playing high school football right now, so it's slowed down his recruitment a little bit. Well, I bring it up because there was a little interesting nugget, a little interesting piece of news that came in his recruitment, and it actually came via. Is my mic off here a little bit? We're gonna have to just finish this show as is. There was one interesting piece of news, and it came via Talen Kenny, who is committed to the University of Kansas. Okay, so Talen Kenny, 5-star prospect from the state of Kentucky. We talked about him all summer long. And for a long time, we thought it was going to be Louisville, and then there was other teams involved. He visited Arkansas a few weeks ago. But I bring it up because Talen Kenny on Sunday actually committed to Kansas. First of all, great get for Bill Self. Kansas fans think I don't like Kansas. I do like Kansas. The issue has been they've been a little bit disappointing. When you start the last two seasons number one in the country and you finish the season on the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, this year is a 7 seed. I'm sorry, that's a disappointing season, okay? But Bill Self, to his credit, gets this recruitment done. By the way, I think we all saw the story, Talen Kenny. There was a report that Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey had words outside of his house when they were recruiting him. This was a story from a few weeks ago, but apparently, midnight Eastern time was the first time you could meet with recruits. Mark Pope was supposed to go first. He doesn't show up. Pat Kelsey says, I'm going in. Then Mark Pope shows up, apologizes for being late. Pat Kelsey's there. They start yapping at each other, whatever. Well, Talen Kenny, over the course of the last couple of days, decided that he was going to make his decision. He chooses Kansas. Good for him. I think he's going to be really good at Kansas. They clearly need a point guard for when Darren Peterson leaves after this year. I think, was it Bill Self? I think it was Talen Kenny. Somebody said, Darren's probably going to be the number one pick, and Talen Kenny's the guy that gets to replace him. We'll see if Darren Peterson is the number one pick, but he's going to be gone. Talen Kenny's in. What does this have to do with Tyran Stokes? I know you're all wondering. Well, here's what. Talen Kenny wants to bring Tyran Stokes to Kansas with him. Matt, you could pop up the tweet, Talen Kenny telling Joe Tipton after he committed. Joe Tipton said, I asked Talen Kenny who he plans to recruit when he gets to Kansas. His response, shoot, I already know one that's coming. Right when I said I was going, he put that call in. I ain't going to say his name, but he's going to announce. Then, and this is where it gets interesting, Talen Kenny says, I'm trying to get Tyran Stokes on board too. Very interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. First of all, Talen Kenny saying that he has one guy already that he knows is coming. When Talen Kenny committed, said, I put that call in. I'm not going to say his name, but he's going to announce. I don't have this on 100% authority. I do think that's four-star center Davion Atkins, currently plays at Prolific Prep, which is now in the state of Florida. He's going to announce this weekend. It's down to Houston. It's down to Rutgers, I believe, is the third team, and Kansas. Down to those three. And I think Davion Atkins is going to be the second player to commit to Kansas in about an 8-day period and join Talen Kenny. But can they get Tyran Stokes? I think that's why everybody's here. And I think what I would say is this. I think it's a great thing for Talen Kenny to say. I think he's certainly going to try, and I think it's possible. But I don't know that right now, this second, I would necessarily peg Tyran Stokes to Kansas. Why could it happen? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, Kansas is in the mix. I mean, Tyran Stokes did visit Kansas, I want to say in like May or June. It was actually pretty early on the calendar. Visited Kansas. By the way, shout out Tyran Stokes. He was the first player I've ever seen bring his dog to his recruiting photo shoot. That's a thing. I don't know if it's going to become a thing, but Tyran Stokes did it at Kansas. So the relationships there with Kansas. And also remember, Talen Kenny from the state of Kentucky. Tyran Stokes originally from Louisville. There's a tie there. They're both from Kentucky. They've probably known each other since they're kids. And I certainly think that Talen Kenny is going to do his best to get Tyran Stokes to the university or to Kansas University. And so we'll see what happens. I think there's ties there. What I would also say is this. I don't know if it's going to happen, although what I'll also say about Tyran Stokes is that the recruitment has been so quiet over the last couple of weeks because I truly believe he's focused on playing high school football. But at the end of the day, listen, I'll just be quick on Tyran Stokes. One, we talked about this probably a month ago. I still think it's ultimately going to be a Nike school. I know that in this era of NIL, Adidas, Nike, Under Armour doesn't matter as much. You know, Cooper Flagg signed with New Balance, played for a Nike school at Duke. Darius Acuff is at Arkansas, and Nike school has a deal with Reebok. And I think, 15 years ago, if you played on a Nike AAU circuit, you went to a Nike school. If you played in an Adidas circuit, you went to an Adidas school. I don't think it's quite like that anymore. I just don't think that Nike is going to let this kid get away. Tyran Stokes is going to be the number one pick in the 2027 NBA draft. So high school senior who will play a freshman year in 2026, 2027, he's going to be the number one pick. You don't want him going to a rival school that is Adidas. And I think more importantly, then all of a sudden you get in that Adidas ecosystem. Ecosystem? Is that right? Ecosystem? Yeah, that sounds right. Where all their execs are at these Kansas games or Louisville games for that matter. They're at all your games. They're around your people. They're around your agent. They're around your mom. And I think if you're Nike, you say, if we got to drop a bag to make sure that this kid ends up at Kentucky or Oregon or USC, then we're going to go ahead and do it. And so to me, listen, I think we're going to start to get clarification soon, maybe after football season of all things. But I would still say that as of right now, I think I would probably lean Kentucky. I still think Kentucky is probably the team to beat on that recruiting front. He's from the state of Kentucky. I know his mom did the whole thing of, we're Louisville people. We don't watch Kentucky games, whatever. But Nike school, home state, Mark Pope, you can sell as like you're the face of the biggest brand in college basketball. He would be probably like that first mega one and done superstar of the Pope era. And he's from the state of Kentucky. And to Mark Pope's credit, he has closed very well on players from Kentucky, Malachi Moreno, Jasper Johnson, most notably. So we'll see what happens. I think it's interesting. Listen, Oregon's going to make their push. I know he visited USC. And I will say, if it's going to be an Adidas school, like, don't you think it would be Louisville more likely than it would be Kansas? Hometown schools, whatever, face of the program, face of the city, etc. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it's an interesting story. I don't know that Talen Kenny is going to go ahead and be able to convince Tyran Stokes to come to Lawrence.